Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, a Spotlight podcast. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
All right, so we all know that this pandemic has disrupted virtually all forms of business, but the restaurant industry has been particularly hard hit. However, there are some amazing stories of resilience and even expansion. So here to discuss how one brand has navigated the past few years are the co-owners of Saddleback BBQ and newly formed Slice by Saddleback, Mr. Travis Stoliker and Matt Gillett. Welcome, Travis and Matt.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
I've been following your story for a long time. A huge Saddleback fan. We'll talk about Detroit Frankie. I'm a pizza guy. I'm a Philadelphian by nature or by origin, and I love a good slice of pizza. So I'm really excited to talk about barbecue and pizza, especially right before lunchtime. So, talk a little bit about how did you two partner up originally to get into the food service industry?
You want to take that one, Trevor?
Sure. So Matt and I have known each other. Boy, at the time it was for about 10 years. We had a little group of friends that were kind of all business owners or aspiring entrepreneurs at the time. And actually, my wife and I had just gotten engaged. We were just engaged at the time. And Matt had put on a catering at one of our friends' events. It used to be called Launch, the Celebration of Entrepreneurship, put on by our friends Jason Myers and Nick Chelenko. And Matt just did an amazing job with the food. At this time, he was the assistant general manager out at Dusty's. And my soon-to-be wife came to me and said, why don't we have Matt cater our wedding? And I was at the time just selling a company that I was a part of called Liquid Web, and we had sold that to a private equity firm at that time. But I was under a confidentiality agreement, so nobody knew. My wife and my father were the only people in my world that knew. It was an 8-month ordeal of selling the company. It was very, very stressful. And I had a non-compete as a part of that said I couldn't do anything in technology, basically.
Okay.
So I knew I had to do some investing to keep myself interested in anything. And I had 3 rules of investing. Don't invest in a bar or restaurant or something you don't understand. And so Matt asked, could I invest in a restaurant? And I said yes. and I think it was about 6 or 8 weeks later that we had an actual restaurant opened. I mean, it was that fast. Matt, I had gotten in a habit at that time of, especially like everybody had a good idea for an app. So everybody was coming, hey, I've got this great idea. Will you invest in this business? And I would just always say, hey, if you send me a business plan, let's talk about it. Matt was the only person that within 24 hours had a business plan to me, statement of cash flows, some basic projections. And it just showed that he really knew what he was talking about, and he was really serious about this. And I also should give credit. He worked with a lot of the entrepreneurial resources in Lansing. I believe it was a small business development center. I believe Lori was one of them that helped over there. MEDC, Leap.
I communicated with. I tried to take advantage of all those sorts of networks that are provided by local communities.
It's amazing the ecosystem that we have here. And again, I haven't lived anywhere else in a while, so I'm not sure whether we just do the same stuff as well as everyone else or whether we've really got a cutting edge thing. I think the university sparks a lot of that. You know, they have their own ecosystem for entrepreneurship, but I think some of these other resources that are outside of the university are phenomenal and I think underutilized. Although I think these folks will tell you that they're busy, but based on the service and quality I sometimes get in small business, it seems like they need to know that these services are available. They can maybe fix problems that they have that they don't really even recognize that they have solutions out there.
Absolutely.
No, that's fantastic. So you had the business plan. You looked around the corners. You knew where the pitfalls might be and knew what you wanted to do. Was barbecue always the thing?
No, I mean, I was excited about just trying something on my own. Barbecue kind of came, it all kind of worked together. It seemed like a startup that I could financially get behind and get some legs. That's something I could do on the weekends while working full time. And when Travis and I crossed paths, it was just kind of like everything was ready to go. I had kind of set the table, for no pun intended there, and it just seemed to work out.
That's great. So so your first place was the Rio Town Saddleback BBQ, right? Went into the Vintage Cafe, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is killing me because I had my first client when I left corporate America and became a consultant was down the street from there, and Rio Town was a lot less than what it is. I discovered the Vintage Cafe as a place to go for lunch about 3 or 4 weeks before they left and you took over. They named a flatbread for me.
Whoa, I didn't know
because
that.
I custom order. I saw all the ingredients on the deal. I said, could you make a flatbread with these 6 or 7 ingredients on it? And they said yes. And I ordered it regularly enough. They said, this looks really good. We're going to name it the Chris.
That's awesome. You know, Kate that owned that place, when we ended up purchasing that building, and not really the building because it was a lease, but we had to purchase all the assets inside it.
Okay.
Kate gave us this basket of all of these great things and just like a celebration of congratulations on your new business.
Okay.
That was just the kind of person she was, just really supportive, and it was great.
Cleanest restaurant we've ever walked through, too. I mean, spotless restaurant. We've walked through a lot at this time. Like,
and Chris, you know, you pointed out something. My biggest concern at that time was not in Matt. You know, it was Riotown.
Right.
You know, it was not what it is now. And, you know, there's a lot of credit that should be thrown around for that. You know, Paul Jakes and Tony at Leap and all these people, Tom Stewart, a lot of people that put a lot of energy into Riotown, Ryan Wirt, the Riotown Commercial Association. There wasn't a lot of investment down there, and there had been some issues with crime in the past that had scared some people away from that area.
Yep.
But it was the place where the automobile industry really started in America, right there with Ransom Olds and Riotown.
Right.
And we really wanted to help bring that back, but that was the thing that was most concerning at that time. But now to have Blue Owl and Sleepwalker and Artisan and all of these great places down there, it's really completely different now, and it's great to be a part of that.
Now, how long did you run that single store before you expanded out into Okemos?
Gosh, it's what, 2 years?
I think 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah,
and was that just capacity size and trying to serve a different market? What made you decide to expand back then? That was all pre-pandemic.
Yeah,
so.
Early stages, we had a different business model. It was more like me searching Craigslist for opportunities and seeing what was out there. So we didn't have any real crazy long discussions about expansion. It was an opportunity that kind of fell in our lap. We did a lot of we kind of had a different way of looking at things then. And just like Trav mentioned about Riotown, things of concern were parking, landmark companies, just noticing like having a mall by you or a destination. Some of those things at that point lacked. So we were really just looking at something that could answer some of those questions, and that's kind of how Okemos fell into being.
And since this is a business show too, I mean, one of the other things was this was the time when Matt was working 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. I mean, he was really, really grinding. He was doing that entrepreneurial, the grind that really goes unnoticed, I think. We needed to get more revenue so that Matt could pay himself more. I mean, that's the honest truth. We know that restaurants are a low margin business, and if you want to have a business where you can pay your employees and your owners well, you have to get revenue to a point where your earnings can actually support that. We needed a second restaurant in order to be able to support the earnings that Matt justifiably needed to make and our employees needed to make. And that really only comes from increasing your revenue.
Right. No question. And, you know, as an Okemos resident, you know, I loved going to Riotown regularly, but when Okemos opened, that was just the place that we'd prefer to go to eat your great food, which is really what this is all about. I applaud you for continually evolving. I mean, every time I went into the Okemos store, something significant had changed. You know, you expanded, you know, and had the second room, the way you would order your food, the way that the bar was set up. I mean, it seems like, but you never lost your soul. I mean, the food that was delivered was always, in my opinion, priced right and tasted great, which is the formula I think that you need to make. But that seems uncommon. I walk into other restaurants that never seem to change anything, and maybe there's some charm to that, but what sparks you into constantly reevaluating and making changes in the way you do what you do?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. You know, Travis comes kind of from more of a tech background, so he's, I think, got his foot a little bit moving forward as far as staying on top of things, seeing innovation, seeing how we can reach our customers better, give a different sort of experience. I'm coming from more of a product side and operations side, trying to create that product that can match kind of the focus on the other end. So it's a really cool mesh. It's not as easy as it necessarily sounds, but it allows us to take some risks, try out some new things, and see where it goes. The whole world's constantly changing. Restaurants is one of those things where it's not as obvious until maybe you look at some of the bigger brands and how they're operating and what they're trying to do as they move forward. So we're trying to piggyback on some of those, create our own ideas, and hopefully be ready for the future.
I mean, it comes to Matt too, and I appreciate the kind words that he said. And But it comes to Matt's openness to re-examine things. You know, we have a set of values and principles that we operate by as owners, and we try to hopefully impart on our employees when they're at the company. And one of those is to challenge all sacred cows and to really always be questioning, could we do this better? And that's a value that Matt and I really own. So for 6 years, we're every single day waking up thinking, what can we do to serve customers better? How can we serve the employees better? How can we serve the community better? And it seems cliche and it seems like a marketing statement, but honestly, I think we live that, and I'm glad that you've noticed that when you come into our restaurants.
No question. And talk about your core values and the things that are really important to you. What I love almost more than your food is how open and transparent you've been, particularly on social media. I remember when your costs increased and you did the little whiteboard example of why you're no longer going to have wings.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a 6 or 7 minute long video that discussed how restaurants make money and where the margins are and how much you can afford to spend in these different buckets. And at some point, you get to a point where the raw ingredient is going to cost so much that when you put those multipliers on the rest of the formula, people aren't going to spend $22 for 6 wings.
Right.
And so you just have to make decisions. But to explain it, to bring it down to a lay person who otherwise would just say, Saddleback doesn't do wings anymore. What the hell?
Yeah.
I mean, that's disappointing, and that's just a withdrawal, and I'm going to struggle with that. And you kind of felt it was, I mean, obviously everything you do is you both do is amazingly sincere, and that mattered. I shared that with other people and just said, you probably didn't know anything about the young business people, and just said, look at this and just watch it. You may have no interest in the content, but just what it all means, the fact that someone would do that. I tip the cap quite a bit to you and the things that you do.
Really
and you're
appreciate
that.
No,
it's totally my pleasure. And you're going to hate this question too, but beyond that, because I know how humble and just how centered you both are, you've done an amazing outreach during your own hardships to help other people in your industry. And I have a relative who was a head chef at a fancy restaurant, and it was a chain of restaurants, and they worked his butt off, and he actually left the industry because of how much of a grind it was, and the rewards were less than he wanted them to be. And so he fried out on it. But one of the things that he really held true is any place that serves food is a competitor, and we're all struggling to just try to find a way to make money. Now, this isn't a resort kind of a town, but it was dog eat dog. And you're the absolute opposite of that. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think maybe Travis offered up your services, Matt, to go fill in at shifts.
That was Matt's idea. That was Matt.
Okay. I know what we're talking about now.
But it just said, hey, if anyone out there is having trouble with labor, right? Because you have supply chain issues, you have cost increased issues, and you've got labor issues. And there was one bold post that said, if you are in the food service industry and you're fried and don't have enough talent, we are more than willing to help you fill a shift at your place to help you get through this tough time.
That was completely Matt's idea. Nobody took us up on the offer, but
a lot of traction. Nobody really pushed forward on it.
Yeah, but I mean, so let's first be very clear. We benefit from our community involvement, right? It is a benefit to Saddleback.
Right.
And, that's one of the things that people cynically will say is that, and we fully admit it, but our customers expect us to do good by the community. They expect us to be people that support the community and lift up the area. So we talk about that. And honestly, we get most of our community involvement ideas from our community. So the first thing that happened during the pandemic was Matt and I ended up reading this article. I think it was in the LSJ or maybe the Detroit newspapers.
Yep.
But it was stating that after we had to close the schools because of COVID, that there was something like 800 and 900,000 school children that rely on the free and reduced lunch program. There's only 10 or 11 million people in Michigan. That's a huge number that rely on the free and reduced lunch program. When those schools closed, there was a big question mark of where are those kids going to get meals from? Now, of course, the schools stepped up in huge ways, doing these meal drop-offs and everything. But at the time, it was really scary. It was like, what are these kids going to do? So we did a really simple thing. We just said, if you bring in a kid, you're going to eat for free. If you just say, hey, you need help, we'll feed up to 3 kids if you bring someone in. And then that led to somebody saying, hey, I want to help with that. How do I help? Can we feed more people? Well, then we're like, okay, well, let's start a little thing where if somebody wants to donate, they can donate $5 and we'll promise to feed 2 people. And that just snowballed. And we ended up feeding like 2,000 kids. We ended up getting Trinity Church involved. And it just led to this snowball of our community saying, hey, can we do more? And can we help? And we were kind of a conduit for that giving. And that just led into a whole bunch of community giving that we never expected that we were going to be a part of.
Just good people doing good things. It brings out the best in people. And I think that, by being the people that you are allows those things to happen. And while other people certainly contribute to get that finish line crossed, being the people you are help that get started. And, we all collectively can't thank you guys enough. That's a fantastic story.
I appreciate that. And I hope that other businesses will do the exact same thing.
Right.
I hope that everybody will copy this because honestly, it does benefit them. It's benefited us for sure. Now, honestly, Matt gets recognized a lot because he's got the mustache and, he's
good looks in general.
It's pretty much
tough.
And it was always barbecue. Now when we're out to lunch, it's always, thank you for what you do for the community. And it gives me chills talking about it right now. It's one of those things like, don't recognize us for this because you want to kind of be nameless, but it's really incredible. Really incredible.
Well, that's great. So you haven't closed, you haven't shrunk. You decided though in the midst of this pandemic that maybe you'd take a left turn and expand and go into a whole different food service line. Talk about why. How did the idea of Slice by Saddleback start?
Well, I think I'm more on the business side, I'd say, but back to the business case, right? We've made commitments to our employees that we want to give them opportunities to grow with us in the food service business. In order for us to do that, we need to increase revenue so that we can increase earnings so that we can pay people a higher wage. I wish there was a simpler way. I wish we could just say all food service businesses pay $80,000, a year. Sadly, that's just not economic reality right now. In order for us to do that, in order for us to fulfill our promises to our employees, to our families, for us to grow the way that we want to, we need to keep growing and we need to keep reinventing ourselves so that we can give those employees more opportunities.
So the Frankie's thing kind of came about. We had endless conversations about products that we could offer, opening up kind of the floodgates to things that might be a little bit easier than barbecue, more accessible, and things that might be consumed more often than maybe a rack of ribs is. So we kind of had it down to deli-style food or pizza. Those 2 buckets were kind of our focus. We weren't necessarily searching it out necessarily. Trav made a post about looking at the west side for a west side of Lansing Saddleback location, and sure enough, we were reached out to about an opportunity for Detroit Frankie's.
Now, did you know Frankie before all this started?
It's kind of funny. Matt and I had actually done a video where Matt wanted to go out and we wanted to feature, they had just opened this Pennsylvania location.
Right.
And Matt wanted to go out and learn how to make a pizza and hopefully give Frankie's a little bit of a support there and get some of our
PR. Yeah,
some of our fans to go in there to their new place. So we did this whole video and we got to meet Frankie and it was great. And actually, Matt met Frankie before he was even starting Saddleback.
Yeah, pre-Saddleback, one of my big things that I wanted to do was, this was kind of around the food truck craze, was see how some of these smaller operators ran their businesses, see if they're profitable. And Frankie was one of those guys that was kind of just doing his thing on the corner. I wanted to really learn from him and see, hey, what does it take to start something like this? Is this worthwhile or is this just a hobby? So I kind of trolled him for a little bit. I went out there, watched him do his thing, and then finally, I got up the courage to go talk to him. And he was like, he knew instantly what I was going to ask. He's like, I've been watching you staring at me over there, and he had something to ask me. So he was kind enough to give me his 2 cents. But man, this was probably a year and a half, 2 years before Saddleback even was on the radar.
Oh wow!
So
okay.
it was always in a work in progress. So this is kind of full circle now that we're in the position that we are.
Okay. And excuse me. So was it his exit from the industry that created the opportunity for you to kind of step in? Like, was that already in play?
Frank wanted to spend more time with his grandkids and wanted to focus more on, obviously I shouldn't talk for Frank, but I think he wanted to focus more on the backyard caterings where he'd go out to events and do graduation parties and stuff. But he really wanted to retire and spend more time with his family. And I mean, he's been in this business for 30 years or something as an Italian pizza specialist.
Yeah.
I mean, we think he makes the best pizza in town. It's one of the best pizzas that I've ever had in my life. And when they gave us that opportunity to even be considered to acquire him, I mean, Matt and I really jumped at it. And boy, I think we put the whole thing together in like a month.
Yeah, it came together pretty quick. I think both sides were ambitious at getting something done, and it was the right place at the right time again.
Well, I'm an East Coaster, and I love a good pizza, and Detroit Frankie's was the go-to spot in mid-Michigan for me. And so when I heard first that he was leaving and closing, and so I was kind of shattered a little bit that was not going to be available anymore. And then you started teasing with a new announcement coming, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe these guys will do something cool that can kind of fill that void for me. And then the marriage made in heaven of you guys taking over his stuff. So you're not just taking over. And Slice by Saddleback is essentially the new brand for Detroit Frankie's, right?
Yep.
But you're going to do things radically different than Frankie did, or are you trying to keep his processes alive?
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me was pizza's my favorite food. However you want to measure it, by taste, by the amount of money I spend on it, it's by far my favorite. I just recently, like maybe in the last 5 years, realized that I don't think I'd actually had good pizza. I was more of a chain guy,
right.
And it's not saying those are bad pizzas, but like that kind of artisanal style pizza I really hadn't experienced. So when Frankie's came around, it was like, I have to immerse myself in this. I want to not only carry on what he's done, but also, step up, see if I can improve some things in different areas. And, our team has spent last 2 months, just probably more than that now, 3 months, just in there learning from him, putting things in practice. And our goal is to keep it as similar and hopefully better as we move forward.
Right on. And is it hard?
Harder than I thought it was going to be. But good hard. It's not, it's difficult. It's challenging, but I mean, it's rewarding too. I mean, seeing those pies come out of that oven they're beautiful.
That's great, and I agree. I haven't tried the Slice by Saddleback versions, but my memory of eating a good Detroit Frankie's pizza is fresh in my mind. So when I sit down and make the comparison, I'll be sure to let you know. But I have no concerns at all that I will enjoy that pizza. So now, where are you? Detroit Frankie's brick and mortar locations were reasonably new. I always knew him as a food truck guy, and it wasn't that long ago that he went to a storefront. Share with us where you guys are.
Yeah, so we're currently out in operation. Right now we're open from 4 to 9 p.m. Monday through, 7 days a week over at our West Saginaw location. Our plan is to open up at lunch at some point here in the near future, expanding possibly to our South location building, which is on South Pennsylvania. Okay. And that's kind of our main focus for the next few months. So the South Lansing location, that was a double brand with the Good Truck and Diner owner. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Is he still in operation down there, or is the building empty?
No, unfortunately, they closed up maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And so they're not operating out of there anymore. We would have loved to have them in there, but it just wasn't working out for them. So now we're going to have to do some remodeling of the building, and we're going to need to get a new wood-fired pizza oven over there, and we're hoping to open that within a month or two, but it's really going to depend on construction and all that.
Got it. So Slice will be available in South Lansing, South Penn, and over on the West Saginaw Highway, kind of just west of Horrocks, right?
That's right.
Where the big community, the commercial district, really.
Yeah, a lot going on over in that.
There really is. Yeah. There really is. So 2 Saddleback locations, 2 Slice locations. Well, one coming soon and one already operational. How can people learn more about your great story?
www.saddlebackbbq.com, or you can email Matt or myself, Travis, at any time at info@saddlebackbbq.com. Obviously, we're on Facebook, Instagram. We probably have a Snapchat somewhere. We're everywhere that you need to be for social media these days.
Well, just a fantastic story. Really proud I finally got you guys in here. So Saddleback BBQ, the new Slice by Saddleback. We've been talking to co-owners Matt Gillett and Travis Stoliker. Thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.